And please let the record note that all council members are present with the exception of Mr. DeBory and Ms. Armstrong. We have minutes of the meeting of January 22nd. Without objection, they'll be approved. Seeing none, we'll move on to our schedule of committee meetings. Ms. Rabine.
Hey, thanks. Public Safety and Health will lead off committee meetings this coming Wednesday, the 7th of February at 8:50 in the morning and continue to 9:35. Public Works is going to meet from 9:40 to 11:40. Committee of the Whole will meet from noon to 1:30. And I believe that's actually the locations listed on the committee schedule is incorrect. It will not be held in the City Council chambers. It will be held at the Public House over on West Broadway. So I will update that before issuing the final committee schedule today. Administration and Finance will meet Wednesday at 1:50 till 2:05, and Parks and Conservation meets from 2:10 to 3:05. And that's our committee schedule this week.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Any changes to the committee schedule? Seeing none, we'll move on to the public comment portion of our agenda. This is your opportunity to comment on items not elsewhere on the agenda this evening. Any general public comment? Fair enough. We will move on to our consent agenda. Items on that agenda were approved unanimously in council standing committees. We save a little time on Monday evenings by considering these items all at once. Ms. Rabine will read the list of consent agenda items aloud, so those in the audience and those at home will know what we're considering, and we'll take comment on these items before we vote. Ms. Rabine.
Thanks, Marion. Tonight's consent agenda has 9 items. And the first item, as always, is to approve claims, which are the city's accounts payable. The first item is actually to ratify claims for last week since the City Council didn't meet, and that's claims in the amount of $1,047,886.13. Those checks were dated January 30th, 2018. Number 2 is to approve claims in the amount of $1,325,828.33 for checks that were dated February 6th, that's tomorrow, 2018. Number 3 is to adopt a resolution relating to curb and sidewalk improvements adjacent to miscellaneous parcels. It's project number 2017-001 of the city's sidewalk, curb, gutter, and alley approach program, ordering in those sidewalk, curb, gutter, and alley approach improvements on those parcels of land. Number 4 is to adopt a resolution relating to the Van Buren Phase 3 Lilac to Missoula curb and sidewalk improvements. It's project 13.018 of the city's sidewalk, curb, gutter, and alley approach program, ordering in those sidewalk, curb, gutter, and roadway improvements and directing notices to be given to affected property owners. Number 5 is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign an agreement with the Corporation for Supportive Housing of New York for services related to a community planning process to identify supporting housing services for chronically homeless individuals in an amount not to exceed $49,500. Number 6 is to set a public hearing on February 26, 2018 on a resolution amending the annual appropriations for the city of Missoula, Montana as set forth in the fiscal year 2017 budget. That amends the total Missoula Redevelopment Agency, or MRA, budget, including increasing revenues by $3,044,303 and increasing expenditures by $1,925,713 in order to recognize additional revenue based on final valuations and mill levies, anticipated bond proceeds, administrative and project-related revenue and expenditures during the fiscal year, and incorporate ongoing construction projects and bond issues with related debt service that were carried forward from fiscal year 2016. Number 7 is to authorize the mayor to sign an interlocal agreement between the city of Missoula and Missoula County for the management of Fort Missoula Regional Park, including programming services, recreation, maintenance, and operations. Number 8 is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a purchase agreement with First Responders of Idaho for the City of Missoula Police Department to purchase personal protective equipment, which are bulletproof vests, authorized in the fiscal year 2018 2018 general fund budget in the amount of $40,950. And finally, number 9 is to adopt a resolution authorizing Missoula Cable Access Television, actually that should be Missoula Community Access Television, to retain the Buskey Group of California to conduct a community needs assessment of the cable-related needs and interests of both MCAT and the City of Missoula.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Mr. Von Lossberg, I'm aware that you're interested in sending item number 4 back to committee. Would you like to tell us about that, please?
Sure, thanks. Yeah, I'd like to send number 4 back to committee. This is the Van Buren Phase 3 project. I've been in a number of conversations with the chair of the committee, my colleague Jordan Hess, city engineer, and some of the folks on the engineering staff. There are some constituent communications and dialogue that would serve that well to return this to committee. Everyone seems to be on board with doing that, and I think it's the right thing to do for the affected constituents, and probably will allow us to balance still dealing with this in the very near future, working on bids. So unless there's objection, I would like to have that returned to Public Works.
Thank you. Without objection, that item can go back to committee. Seeing none, and it is returned. We have a sense, Mr. Hess, of when you might.
Yeah, we'll hear that this Wednesday to keep the bid process on track. I would like to add 10 minutes to the meeting. Ms. Raymond, if we can move public safety and health to start 10 minutes earlier, that would be helpful.
Okay, so for folks watching, that means that Public Safety and Health will start at 8:40 and Public Works will start at 9:20, right?
Okay.
Or sorry, 9:30, yes, 9:25. We're doing 10 minutes.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
With that, anyone in the audience care to comment on any of the items on the consent agenda this evening? All right, seeing none. Questions or comments from council members? Mr. Ramos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question on item 1 on the consent agenda. I'm curious why we're paying $22,500 to InfoSend to mail bills. Is this for bills for the water? Are those water bills, or is that something completely different?
We can find out for you. I don't know.
Okay. And how come we're paying U of M $24,000 for a budget priority survey? I'm just a little bit curious about that.
We will be bringing a survey forward within the next couple of weeks to help us with our budget process.
Okay, so they're going to be giving their input as to what they think we should do for prioritizing.
They'll be conducting a survey for us.
Okay. And then item 2, the $14,000 roughly to Boone Carlberg. As I told you, Mr. Mayor, in your office, I am glad that we own the water company now, but again, I am not comfortable voting on this until I've been fully briefed. I did meet at Boone Carlberg with the attorneys and got somewhat briefed on some of the stuff, but I have not gotten a detailed description. So without objection, I'd like to remove item 1 and item 2, separate the question out for those two.
Okay.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote, pardon me, on items 3 and 5 through 9.
Okay, on consent agenda items 3 and 5 through 9, Anderson.
Yes.
Anderson votes yes. Becerra? Yes. Becerra votes yes. Cares? Yes. Cares votes yes. Harp?
Yes.
Harp votes yes. Hess? Yes. Hess votes yes. Jones? Yes. Jones votes yes. Merritt? Yes. Merritt votes yes. Ramos?
Yes.
Ramos votes yes. Von Lossberg? Yes. Von Lossberg votes yes. And West? Heidi's absent. Sorry. Is it Heidi? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. West votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 10 ayes and 2 absent.
And on items number 1 and 2?
On the items number 1 and 2 on the consent agenda, the claims, Becerra? Yes. Becerra votes yes. Cares votes yes. Harp.
Yes.
Harp votes yes. Hess votes yes. Jones votes yes. Merritt votes yes. Ramos?
No.
Ramos votes no. Von Lossberg votes yes. West votes yes. And Anderson?
Yes.
Anderson votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 9 ayes and 1 nay and 2 absent.
And the consent agenda is approved. We'll move on to comments from city staff, agencies, boards, commissions, authorities, and the community forum. And we do have a forum report this evening from Mr. Grimm.
Can you hear me pretty well? I can hardly hear you.
You know, I've asked Ms. Rabine to turn up our microphones. I'm having the same trouble. Most people like that about me, however, Mr. Grimm.
Okay. So I was the moderator for the Missoula Community Forum a couple of Thursdays ago, and my name is Doug Grimm. I see a few new faces here. Thanks for taking the time to help run your city. We appreciate it. Community Forum, in case you don't know, is we are the people who are between the citizens here in the city and you folks. And so we have meetings during the year in our neighborhoods. We have 18 neighborhoods, and we're all volunteer. When you come right down to it, there's actually a lot of people behind me. They're all volunteering to do things here for the city. So we had a presentation from Will Seaburn, City of Missoula Grants Administrator, and he talked about community development block grants and home investment partnerships and reaching home and brownfields program and so on. Next on the agenda, we had neighborhood project funds. Now, I'm not going to quote you exact figures, but for the last 10 or 15 years, we have been granting people or organizations here in the city funds to build projects of their own design and their own thoughts, things that would help benefit their neighborhood. I can think of about 50 projects that I have seen around town. Of course, a lot of you have seen traffic signal boxes that have been painted, and we pay for those. Or maybe you haven't really noticed it, but there's a lot of trees here in Missoula that have been planted by people, and other than the park department. And we also find school projects that we enhance, and we erect signs, and it just goes on and on and on. And so we have grants that people can apply for during the year for amounts of $500. Excuse my cough. And we also have $3,000 grants for larger projects. Now, when a person applies for a grant, we're not paying those people to do the work. We're just giving them the money to buy the materials. So what happens is you'll have maybe a neighborhood wants to plant some trees in a certain spot on public land. So they have the trees. How do they get them planted? Well, we find volunteers in that neighborhood, the people that requested the money, find those volunteers, and oftentimes they'll be moms and dads, and they will show up and they bring their kids and their shovels, and it's a wonderful thing for volunteers to get together and realize, wow, the city of Missoula is paying some of our tax dollars for this little project that we needed, or a bench someplace or something. And so it's a wonderful thing. I mean, sometimes I've heard in the past, what the hell is the city doing buying a water company? Damn. But then they see, wow, we're getting some money here for something that we really, really enjoy. And so it puts you people in a good light. Well, we have not asked for an increase in these funds for more than a decade. Now, if we had been increasing for funds every year at the normal rate that prices increase, we would probably be asking a total of, say, 30%. And so we have talked about it, and we have passed a motion that we would appreciate it if the mayor and you people would vote us an increase in funds. So we can have either more different projects we can fund, or a little bit bigger increase in the amount of the projects that we do fund. I think we have 3 big projects and maybe 5 or 6 smaller funds. Now, my understanding is that you people may never hear about this again, but my understanding is that the mayor gets bombarded with requests from everybody to increase everybody's funding. And he has to go through and put 2 piles, I guess. One is not worth it, and the other one will think about it. And so if he puts it in the pile where you get a chance to think about it, then you'll be able to hear about this again. And so, Jane Kelly, who is our leader in the Office of Neighborhoods, is planning another Outstanding Neighborhood Volunteer Award. And if you are interested or know someone that you'd like to volunteer to receive an award, it's just a name on a plaque and a presentation by the mayor here in the City Council chambers. We need to have that information by February 7th. And also, Jane Kelly talked about a sidewalk study from Development Services. And they have looked to see how many sidewalks that are needed in each neighborhood. And I represent the Upper Rattlesnake neighborhood, and I'm proud to say that we came in last. We have the fewest sidewalks per mile of street of anybody in the neighborhood, which is really great because when the deer are running down the street, it's easier to get into someone's yard if you don't have to run across the sidewalk. So that's a big point for not having a lot of sidewalks in our neighborhood. Karen Gasvoda, Jane Kelly's assistant, is planning a bus tour. And all you people are invited to come to this bus tour. We divide the city up into 3 areas, and this time we will be taking a bus trip through this area of town, which means that, and we're going to provide sandwiches, and you'll meet at around 4:15 out at the where all the buses are stored, city buses. Beach transportation. So this will take a couple of hours, and we will be talking about, as we drive through all the neighborhoods in this area, what has been completed, what is planned. Maybe you'll see things that you never knew existed in Missoula. So we'll be driving through the Rattlesnake, Upper and Lower, maybe East Missoula, the downtown area, the university area, the Central Business District, and part of the north side. Okay. Now, before I started this meeting, as the moderator, I got a brilliant idea. I thought, at the beginning of the meeting, I said, the city council has us do a little report so that we can pass on to them things that we'd like to see done in our neighborhoods, things that we see that we want to complain about. And so we'll go to that point of our meeting at this point. We have Moose Can Gully, and 2 members of the leadership team participated in the sidewalk survey, and they will be having a leadership team meeting in the near future. Now, what happened is, when I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, think about things that you want to have me present, they had an hour and a half to think. So I've got a lot of material here. Okay.
Yeah,
Lewis,
so,
what?
Mr. Grimm, we're not going to go through the hour and a half of material tonight, right?
No. I'll just spend about 10 minutes at it. 5 minutes.
Let's go 5. Yeah.
Okay. They're Lewis and Clark. They're working with the City Parks Department on the Bancroft Pond, and they're having a meeting, general meeting, March 21st. Rose Park. They had a bike pedestrian manager come to their meeting. They also sent a letter of support for the 5th Street project. In the riverfront, there are 2 new buildings on project for the old sawmill district, and additional plans for building. I guess you all probably know about that, but their next meeting is scheduled for February 12th in Verdice's Bakery. Patty Canyon are working on development of a couple of parks in their neighborhood and on the old Forest Service radio transmitter building in Whitaker Park, and they will be having a meeting April 5th. Jeff Stevens said that his neighborhood ranked second in the lack of sidewalks. Grant Creek, a couple of homeowner associations and the Grant Creek Trails Association contacted with a service to plow Grant Creek Trail this winter, and they are preparing an agreement with the city that would establish rules under which that would be done. Long term, the neighborhood would like to see the city plow the trail. Some members of the Grant Creek Trails Association all met with the upper and lower Rattlesnake neighborhoods, and they're discussing building a trail in that neighborhood. And we're going to they are going to teach us how to do it. Miller Creek will be having a leadership team meeting in February or March. The Homeowners Association is dealing with some complaints in regard to Upper Linda Vista Boulevard trees. Not all homeowners have put in the boulevard trees, so they are working with the city forester on this issue. Snow plowing, sanding on Miller Creek and Linda Vista causes sand buildup on the sidewalks. And they may be having a volunteer spearhead to cleanup day to clean up the sidewalk and sweep off all the sand and trash that's on the sidewalk. Someone in the Homeowner Association may be applying for a grant for playground equipment at the pavilion, or a pavilion at Jeffrey Park. Let's see. And the lower Rattlesnake, they're discussing garbage pickup in the bear buffer zone along with the Grant Creek Neighborhood Council are working with Republic Services to come up with a solution. They're also discussing the deer issue. Amazingly, they were the only ones that talked about deer. I guess people have given up on complaining about deer anymore. And they may be forming a subcommittee to find potential solutions. They will be having a leadership team meeting March 15th and a general meeting April 18th. They have approved writing a letter to the City Council about safety concerns in the intersection of Van Buren and Front. The Heart of Missoula neighborhood, they have been discussing parking on the downtown area and the homelessness transient issue. They are working with 316 to find solutions. Rod Austin attended their last meeting. The Parking Commission may be expanded in the next 10 years from downtown to the railroad tracks to the west and east to the fire station in Madison. Southgate Triangle, building along Brook Street continues. The movie theater and Lucky Market on the mall are getting ready to open. Mary Avenue goes through about 4 roundabouts if you want to travel from one side of town to the other, reserved to Brooks. And passes through mall now, passes through the mall and Montana Rail Link, Bitterroot Tracks. And let's see. And Michelle Cares, City Council liaison, also talked to us about what all you people have been doing here at City Council. And in the Upper Rattlesnake, they will be having a general meeting on February 11th at Messiah Lutheran Church, and Shane Stack will talk about the roundabout going on in Van Buren at the interstate. Also on the agenda are Smart 911 program and the removal of Rattlesnake Creek Dam and Syringa Bike Park. And there have been several reports from the Rattlesnake of the sighting of a unicorn at night, and people have tried tracking the animal, but the animal doesn't have hooves, and they thought it was strange that it seems like it wears shoes. And someone may have hung a cowbell around the animal's neck because once in a while they hear a funny sounding bell. An old timer at the snake named Smoke said he thought he saw a unicorn in Nepal or Bhutan many years ago on one of his backpacking trips. He can't figure out how one could be growing here in the coldness of Missoula because they're really hard to grow. He said you have to have a start. In order to get them started, you have to have the seeds for them. Maybe we have a very, very mild winter for these things to have survived here. And anyway, if you see this thing, please don't shoot it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Not the first unicorn ever to come to a council meeting. We will move on, ladies and gentlemen, to the public hearing portion of our agenda. State law and our own council rules set guidelines for inviting comment in a formal way on a variety of issues, and following a staff report on each of these, the council and I will invite comment. Council typically votes on the same evening as the public hearing unless one council member elects to return that item to committee for further consideration. Our lone public hearing this evening is on the Colinditch Grove Street Townhome and Open Space petition, and we have a staff report beginning this evening with Ms. McCrae. We'll allow technology to catch up with us.
It's green now. It looks like it's just warming up.
Got it.
For the record, Mary McCrae with Development Services. The first part of my presentation will address the request from Colinditch Properties LLC, represented by Territorial Landworks, to annex and zone a 10.63 acre parcel of land located west of Grove Street and south of the Clark Fork River. If City Council approves the request for annexation and zoning, Council will consider the applicant's request for approval of a conditional use for the Colinditch Grove Street townhomes. The conditional use only applies on 4.2 acres within the portion of the property proposed to be zoned RT 5.4 residential. The property is located west of Reserve and Grove Streets and south of the Clark Fork River. The property is shown in blue on this slide. Properties currently within the city limits are shown in orange. The petition to annex includes 2 exhibits describing the 2 parcels for zoning purposes. Exhibit A shows a 4.44 acre parcel proposed to be zoned RT 5.4 residential, shown in blue on this slide. Exhibit B shows a 6.19 acre parcel proposed to be zoned OP1 open space, shown in green on this slide. Now I'd like to cover the development in the surrounding area. The majority of the development is single-dwelling residential and duplex residential, with multi-dwelling residential across Grove Street and Orchard Gardens. In terms of lot sizes, the surrounding property includes city and county subdivisions with lots sizes generally between 5,000 square feet and 9,000 square feet. Across Grove Street is a multi-dwelling development of 45 dwelling units on a 4.18 acre parcel, which is approximately 4,000 square feet per dwelling unit. Now I'd like to cover the zoning upon annexation. The existing county zoning is CRR3, a county designation, which allows single dwelling and duplex residential building types at a density of 4 dwelling units per acre. The land shown in pink on this slide is within the city limits and zoned RT10 residential, which also allows single dwelling and duplex residential building types at a density of 4 dwelling units per acre. The subject property shown with the blue and green hatch mark is 10.63 acres and proposed to be zoned RT 5.4 residential and OP1 open space. The dwelling units are clustered on the 4.44 acres shown in blue, with 6.19 acres preserved as open space, shown in green, for an overall density of just over 3 dwelling units per acre. The RT 5.4 zoning district has the same setback standards and maximum height standards as the RT 10 zoning district. Both also permit single dwelling and duplex residential building types. The parcel proposed to be zoned OP1 will be acquired by the City of Missoula for open space. Now I'd like to cover the zoning criteria with annexation. State law permits municipalities to assign city zoning at the time of annexation as long as the zoning meets one of the 3 criteria shown on this slide. The same criteria are included in the Title 20 zoning ordinance. The municipality can assign city zoning that is compatible to the existing county zoning, assign city zoning consistent with land use decisions that were approved by county officials, or assign city zoning consistent with the land use and zoning recommendations as set forth in the growth policy. Staff recommends assigning zoning in compliance with the 3rd criteria related to the consistency with the growth policy. The applicable regional plan is the Our Missoula City Growth Policy 2035, adopted in November 2015, which recommends a land use designation of residential medium 3 to 11 dwelling units per acre on the east portion of the parcel, shown in orange, and parks and open lands on the west portion, shown in green. The requested RT 5.4 zoning, residential zoning for the northeast portion of the parcel would allow development of up to 8 dwelling units per acre. The requested OP1 open space zoning for the former railroad right-of-way and southwest portion of the parcel encompasses all of the land on the map with the parks and open lands designation. The annexation and zoning preserves open space and clusters residential development for an overall density of just over 3 dwelling units per acre, which is at the lower end of the 3 to 11 dwelling units per acre range recommended by the growth policy. The proposed zoning complies with several policy and goal statements in the Our Missoula City Growth Policy, and they're shown on this slide. The first is to promote compact development and adopt policies such as infill and cluster development to incentivize protecting open space. The annexation preserves open space and clusters of housing, creating a compact development in compliance with the growth policy. The growth policy includes a statement, support land use policy, and expand travel options to include safe, convenient, and connected trails, bike lanes, and sidewalks that provide viable transportation alternatives to the automobile. Within the open space area, the Milwaukee Trail will be extended, serving pedestrians and bicyclists. Sidewalks will be installed on Grove Street adjacent to the subject property and within the development. Another growth policy statement is limit development in areas along primary waterways, group or cluster development that does occur near waterways to minimize impacts on resources. The housing is clustered closer to Grove Street and preserves open space adjacent to the Clark Fork River and along the former railroad right-of-way. The applicable vicinity plan is the 1995 Reserve Street Area Plan Update, which recommends a land use designation of low-density residential, 4 dwelling units per acre for the subject property. The 1995 plan was adopted following the construction of Reserve Street and was built upon the still relevant portions of the 1975, the 1980, and 1990 community planning efforts. Now in 2018, some portions of the plan are likely not relevant. The proposed zoning complies with several goals and objectives in the 1995 plan. 4 of those goals are shown on this slide. The 1995 plan includes the goal to retain low density of 4 dwelling units per acre. The overall density for the 10.63 acres is just over 3 dwelling units per acre in compliance with the density recommendation in the 1995 plan. Another goal outlined in the 1995 plan states create park, trail and other open space opportunities, extend trails, bike paths, and parks, establish river access points. The open space land includes the former railroad right-of-way, which will be developed as an extension of the Milwaukee Trail, and land that fronts the Clark Fork River, which will provide a river access point. The 1995 plan includes a statement, maintain and enhance the area's diverse character and livability, single-family and multifamily, large and small lots. The rezone will facilitate development that contributes to the area's diverse character and livability. The townhome development is compatible with the single-dwelling and duplex townhome residential building types found along Grove Street. There is duplex and multi-dwelling development across Grove Street in close proximity to the subject property. The area includes a mix of large and small lots. Also included in the 1995 plan is a statement, provide adequate infrastructure such as water and sewer, find opportunities to make through streets. The townhome development will be connected to city water and sewer. In addition, construction of Hamilton Way within the development completes the loop road connecting to Streamside subdivision to the north. The first motion for City Council action is for the annexation and zoning request. Staff recommends approval of the resolution to annex the 10.63 acre parcel and zone the parcel in Annexation Exhibit A, RT 5.4 residential, and zone the parcel in Annexation Exhibit B, OP1 open space, subject to 2 conditions. Staff has received a formal protest from more than 25% of the surrounding properties within 150 feet of the parcel proposed to be zoned RT 5.4 residential. An affirmative vote of 2/3 of the City Council members present and voting is required to approve the annexation and zoning upon annexation. If City Council approves the request for annexation and zoning, Council will consider the applicant's request for approval of a conditional use for the Colindage Grove Street townhomes within the portion of the property zoned RT 5.4 residential. And within the portion of the property that's zoned RT 5.4, there are 2 parcels. The 0.24 acre parcel with the existing dwelling unit, which is located right here at 311 North Grove Street, is not included in the conditional use, and this is shown the location for the house. On the adjacent 4.2 acre parcel, which is here, the applicant proposes 31 dwelling units and a townhome park. This slide shows an illustration of the Grove Street townhome development. Again, it's on the left here, and the Streamside subdivision is on the right, located here. Conditional use review is required for townhome developments of 6 or more units in the RT 5.4 zoning district. The conditions of approval only apply on the land within the townhome development. This is the site plan showing the city open space in the green here with the location of trails connections through the open space. There's an existing public trail here shown in purple that connects to sidewalks on Hamilton Way. The inset photo shows the trail looking east from the river, and the trail is here. The land subject to conditional use review for the townhome development is outlined in red, and that's located here. Title 12 and Title 20 include zoning and access standards required for townhome development. As I present the townhome proposal, I will address compliance with the standards and discuss the conditions of approval. The conditions apply only to the land outlined in red. The site plan shows the layout for the townhome development. There are 15 2-unit townhomes and 1 detached house. This is the location for the detached house. Per the townhome standards, 11% of the land is required to be provided as park or open space for the proposed development. The developer has provided a 0.463 acre townhome park that satisfies this requirement, and the townhome park is located here in the blue-green color. City Parks and Recreation staff commented they were in favor of the location for the townhome park. However, if it was a private common area versus public park, an access easement across the park connecting the existing trail to the open space may be required. Both the applicant and City Parks staff are in favor of city ownership of the townhome park. Condition of approval number 10 provides for transfer of the townhome park to the City of Missoula as open space. Now I'd like to discuss the access and road improvements with the townhome development. The conditional use review for townhome development and the conditions of approval only apply to the property outlined in red. As you can see on this site plan, the development is accessed from Grove Street here, which is a public road. The applicant proposes an extension of Hamilton Way through the subdivision, which, is located here, which connects to Hamilton Way and Roderick Way in the subdivision to the north. And 9 units are accessed from Coley Lane, located here, that intersects with Hamilton Way. Hamilton Way within the development was originally proposed as a private road with a public access easement. City engineering and the applicant have agreed that Hamilton Way will be built within public right-of-way with sidewalk easements on each side of the road. Condition of approval number 5 provides the road improvements, including curb, gutter, landscape boulevards, and sidewalks on each side of Hamilton Way in compliance with the regulations. Coley Lane will be a private road within a public access easement. Condition of approval number 6 provides the road improvements, including curb, gutter, and curbside sidewalk on the south side of Coley Lane. Condition of approval number 8 requires the townhome development covenants to include a private road maintenance statement for Coley Lane to inform future homeowners of their road maintenance responsibilities. Hamilton Way will be dedicated right-of-way maintained by the City of Missoula. This is a photo of Grove Street adjacent to the townhome development. There's an irrigation ditch located here along Grove Street. Condition of approval number 4 requires additional paving, curb and gutter, curbside sidewalk, drainage facilities, and ADA improvements for Grove Street adjacent to the development. Curbside sidewalk was approved along Grove Street due to the location of the irrigation ditch. Now I'd like to cover on-street and off-street parking available within the development. This slide shows the east side of the development where Hamilton Way intersects with Grove Street. Hamilton Way will have parking on only the north side of the street. The red rectangles show the location of 4 on-street parking spaces on Hamilton Way. The blue rectangles show 52 off-street parking spaces in garages and driveways for the townhome development. This slide shows the west side of the development where Hamilton Way intersects Coley Lane. The red rectangles show the location of 5 on-street parking spaces on Hamilton Way. Parking is prohibited on Coley Lane. The blue rectangles show 50 off-street parking spaces in garages and driveways for the townhome development. There'll be a total of 9 parking spaces on Hamilton Way and 102 off-street parking spaces in garages and driveways. Condition of approval number 7 requires the developer to provide no parking signage and painting of yellow curb along the south side of Hamilton Way and both sides of Coley Lane. The condition also requires a statement included in the townhome development covenants notifying residents of the parking restrictions. This site plan also shows the mid-block pedestrian crossing along Hamilton Way, shown in pink right here in this location. Hamilton Way is approximately 510 feet in length. Per the townhome standards, a mid-block pedestrian crossing is required for blocks longer than 480 feet. The mid-block crossing leads to clustered mailboxes for the townhome development and meets this requirement. The next few slides are of renderings the architect has prepared for the townhome development. Staff is recommending approval of the conditional use for the townhome development subject to 14 conditions of approval. required for compliance with Title 20, Title 12, and federal, state, and local regulations. Condition number 1 clarifies that City Council approval of the annexation and zoning upon annexation is required prior to consideration of the motion for the townhome exemption development conditional use. Condition number 2 requires plans submitted for the townhome exemption declaration and building permits must substantially comply with those approved as part of the conditional use review. Condition number 3 requires the development covenants to include statements regarding radon mitigation, wood stoves, and energy efficiency related to city-county air pollution control regulations. And conditions number 4 through 8 require road improvements, maintenance, and parking as previously discussed. Condition number 9 requires City Parks approval of a boulevard landscaping and maintenance plan. Condition number 10 requires the townhome park to be transferred to the city as open space. Condition number 11 requires city fire review of a hydrant plan meeting fire code standards. Condition number 12 requires a revegetation and weed management plan approved by the Missoula County Weed District. Condition number 13 requires the development covenants include a statement with information regarding lots within close proximity to a flood control levee. And condition number 14 requires the development covenants include a statement in the amendment section listing the sections related to conditions that may not be amended or deleted without written approval of the governing body. This slide includes the floodplain map for the area. The levee is shown as the red line located here. West of the levee is designated floodway zone AE with a base flood elevation of 3,148 feet. East of the levee is designated area of minimal flood hazard zone X. The city's floodplain regulations do not regulate development occurring in zone X. The city floodplain administrator recommends that purchasers of homes be notified in the covenants of the levee's proximity, which is approximately 200 feet west of the Collin-Ditch-Ted development. This recommendation is required with condition of approval number 13. The city floodplain administrator encouraged structures to be built so that the lowest floor, including basements, be 2 feet above the base flood elevation, which is the 1% annual chance or 100-year flood elevation of the Clark Fork River. City Council inquired whether the homes were planned to meet the 2 feet above base flood elevation, encouraged by the floodplain administrator. The developer's representative responded that the homes will be constructed at an elevation of 3,150 feet or above, which is 2 feet or more above the base flood elevation of 3,148 feet. If City Council wishes to memorialize and require that the homes be constructed at an elevation of 2 feet or more above the base flood elevation, staff recommends condition of approval number 13 be amended to add the following to the end of the condition. The lowest floor elevation for each unit ownership parcel will be a minimum of 2 feet above the base flood elevation of 3,148 feet. The townhome declaration shall include a site plan that lists the lowest floor elevation for each unit ownership parcel prior to zoning compliance approval of the townhome exemption declaration. Now I'd like to cover compliance with the conditional use review criteria. These criteria require compliance with zoning standards and address whether the proposed use is compatible with the surrounding area in terms of character relating to site and building design, operating characteristics such as hours of operation and noise, and review related to traffic safety for all modes of transportation. The townhome development complies with the Title 20 zoning standards for the RT 5.4 district. The applicable TED standards in Title 20, Title 12 access standards, and other federal, state, and local regulations with approval of the 14 conditions of approval. As you can see in this photo, there were several two-story dwelling units built in the property to the north, and this is the Streamside development here. And it's not uncommon in neighborhoods for second stories to be added to homes over time. When considering whether the townhome development is compatible with the character of the surrounding area, Staff reviewed the building types allowed, setbacks, and maximum allowable height standards that the zoning allows on surrounding properties. The RT10 zoning of surrounding city properties and the RT 5.4 zoning of the townhome development require the same building setbacks. Both zoning districts allow maximum building heights of 30 feet or 35 feet with an 8 and 12 roof pitch. Both the RT10 and the RT 5.4 permit single dwelling and 2-unit townhouse building types. The operating characteristics are the same as surrounding properties, as it's all residential. In terms of impacts to traffic safety, city engineering provide detailed information in the memo regarding Grove Street. Based on the most recent traffic counts, the additional vehicle trips added by the townhome development are within the traffic volume for Grove Street, which is classified as an urban local street. Typically, sidewalks and road improvements are installed within the subject property at the time development occurs. The townhome development includes sidewalks and road improvements on Grove Street adjacent to the development. Hamilton Way within the development provides vehicular and pedestrian connections to Hamilton Way to the north. The adjacent home at 311 North Grove Street, and that's in this location right here, is not within the townhome development property. Installation of sidewalks on this parcel would occur with new development on this parcel, such as if an addition was added or the existing home was replaced. The property south of 311 North Grove Street, which is, where's my arrow, right here, is in the county. Sidewalks and road improvements along Grove Street adjacent to this property would occur after it's annexed and at the time of development. For the open space parcel, which is here along Grove Street, improvements along Grove Street adjacent to the open space, such as sidewalks or improvements related to the trail crossing, would occur at the time of the trail development. So if City Council approves the annexation and zoning, City Council will consider the motion for the conditional use request. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use based on the findings of fact in the staff report and subject to the 14 conditions of approval, with the amended language added to condition of approval number 13. I'll turn it over to Elizabeth Erickson of City Parks and Recreation, who will present information on the open space acquisition. And then Paul Forsting with TLI would like to present. His information will address additional questions from City Council at the January 31st Land Use and Planning Committee meeting.
Thank you, Ms. McCray. Ms. Erickson?
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Erickson with the City Parks and Recreation Department and City's Open Space Program, and I just want to provide some additional background and context on the open space acquisition, since this project was approved about a year ago and we have new City Council members, and just to give some additional context to this project. I know many of you have seen this map before, but the outlined in purple here, or shaded in purple, is the Colin Ditch Grove Street Open Space Bond Project parcel. And this is in the context of some of the other public land and trails and open space in the vicinity. Outlined in blue here is land that is owned by the city and managed as open space. This area here, these islands and the braided river channel here, is the Klaus acquisition that was acquired by the city in early 2016. We have the poplar plantation that is a lease that the city holds. We have the wastewater treatment plant, eco-compost, state-owned land. We have the Stall conservation easement here, and then we have state land that's further downriver. And in yellow are part of the city's trail network. And really, this property is truly a crossroads in a lot of conservation work that has happened in this area for many years, decades really. And this parcel, while it's not it's a separate transaction from the townhome development. It is related in the sense that it's part of the same parent parcel, and it will be created through a boundary line relocation that it's going to create the parcel to transfer to the city. So on February 27, 2017, the City Council and the County Commissioners approved the expenditure of open space bond funds for the city to acquire this open space parcel. And before it comes to that public hearing, the project goes through a number of other public meetings. It goes through the Citizens Advisory Committee, it goes to a City Council committee, it goes to the commissioners. So this project has been through a lot of public process, the open space component of it, and was strongly recommended by the Citizen Committee and by the elected officials, by many of you. And this project, it accomplishes a lot of the purposes of the open space bond. It protects water quality and provides access to the Clark Fork River. It allows the city to acquire land for a recreational and commuter trail, and specifically to extend the Milwaukee Trail west from Grove Street. It adds additional acreage of park and open space land to the neighborhood. It protects wildlife habitat, and it just provides additional scenic open space in this part of town. And I just mostly want to show some pictures now to give a little bit more context. This is looking from Grove Street, looking west, and you can see generally where the trail will potentially go in this old Milwaukee Railroad right-of-way. And the Kolendich family is, in addition to selling the land to the city for open space, the family is donating their interest in this existing historic bridge that will provide both legal and physical access to the Klaus property, which the city now owns. And you can see here's a portion of that open space property. Here's the adjacent subdivision, and that bridge is right here. And you can see it here too. And this bridge, the project budget allows for funding to basically have the bridge assessed and to do any sort of safety abatement to make it so it's usable for the public. And this is on the other side of that river channel, looking east now, looking from the Klaus Island back toward the Kolendich property. Suddenly now it's spring. Actually, this might be fall. And this is once you get out onto that Mid-River Island and you're looking over at other city land that's protected on the other side of the Klaus Island, looking at the Tower Street Conservation Area. And again, I just mostly wanted to provide some additional context on that open space acquisition, and I'm available to answer any questions that anybody else might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Erickson. And on behalf of the applicant.
Paul Forsting, Territorial Landworks. I'm here on behalf of the Kolendich family, and Frank Kolendich is here with me today. We're excited to be here. I've been working on this project for several years. About 3 years ago, I was just looking at the layouts today to kind of remind myself of what we had originally worked on. We had some concept layouts where we had single-family houses across this whole property. We had a layout where kind of the entrance to the trail that Elizabeth had shown, we had storage units. We had looked at a lot of different options, and that was about 3 years ago. And then after that, I think luckily for the community, the Parks Department really kind of communicated with Frank and convinced Frank and his family that it would be a great idea to do the open space portion of this project. And so we shifted focus from developing the whole site to developing a portion of the site and putting our units on the site near the existing infrastructure that's off of Grove and Hamilton Way. And so we did that. We submitted our first layout about a year ago. We had our first design review team meeting at the end of February of last year with the planning office. And we also met with the fire department, Parks Department, the engineering staff, and showed them our preliminary layout. And we worked with them over the whole spring through several meetings to talk about building types, the layout, to make sure our infrastructure requirements matched the city's requirements, to make sure that our setbacks were met, to make sure that we we generally complied with the zoning requirements. And so we worked all spring doing that, and we submitted our formal application for the conditional use permit. I think we were the first one. I think we were ahead of the other project in June. And so we submitted that in June of last year, worked all summer diligently on different comments back from the city, and when it came to the fall, we had gotten our the go-ahead for our hearings, and here we are today, and we're really excited about it. And so I'm pleased to be here. We're hoping that we'll get a determination today. Of course, we want an approval. That approval will put us in a good position to start construction this spring. And so that's the plan for the project is to get going on it. And we've we've done a lot of footwork to make that a possibility. And so we're really pleased about it. We're excited to be here tonight and to be able to provide information on the project. There was a couple items from the LUP committee that Councilwoman Cares had said that I should make note of, and I have done those. Item one was regarding the Grove Street improvements, and the other was regarding the heights of our project. I think Mary did a great job of describing what we plan on doing for Grove Street. We're going to make the improvements in front of our project. There aren't, unfortunately, other improvements to tie into other than the stream sidewalks. There are no sidewalks or contiguous sidewalks to the south of our project on Grove. There's about a quarter mile to 3rd Street there, and there's maybe a sidewalk or two intermixed, but there's really nowhere to connect. And so, that's unfortunate, but we'd like to see it improve sometime. It would benefit these homes to have it improved, and I think we've heard some comments from some of the other neighbors that they'd like to see it improved. So we're hopeful that this street, along with a lot of streets in the area, can get those improvements. But we're going to do our part with our development to make sure that we're providing sidewalks interconnected, and thankfully they connect into the stream side sidewalks and create a little network there. The second thing regarding heights, we have building heights on the our lowest profile buildings are 19 feet and 11 inches, and our highest are 24 feet and 11 inches, or excuse me, 24 feet and 9 inches. And so if we round those up, we've got 20 and 25. So we've got about a 5 feet variance between our single stories and our second stories buildings. Those all come below the zoning height maximum limit of 30 and 35. We have 3 buildings with that lower profile and just at 20 feet or just below 20 feet. And those are single story buildings, and they're on our widest lots. And so we can get a larger area. The rest of our buildings are 2-story, and so they're a little bit higher. As Mary mentioned, it's consistent with the 2-story buildings that are in the Streamside subdivision. That height requirement is allowed in this zoning district. It's also allowed in the RT10 zoning district and some of the more dense zoning districts. It also, we're adhering to all the setbacks. We have the same setbacks as the RT10. The RT10 zoning district and the RT5.4, which this project is proposed in, have a lot of the same, well, they have all the same setbacks. They have the same allowed uses. This project would be permitted in this use, in that zoning district. The only reason we're here today with an RT 5.4 project is that it's the city's preference to have the park in an open space zoning designation. And so our development is on the 4 acres, and it needs an RT 5.4 zoning designation. We could be here today with the whole property zoned RT10 with just a large park, and it would still meet the requirements of that zoning district. We'd have all the same setbacks, the same townhouses are allowed, the same heights are allowed. And so I think that's a big point of emphasis. There's some discussion about this being too dense. Well, it's, as far as the comp plan goes and about looking for places for houses, this is on the low end of the of what would be allowed. I mean, it's the medium residential comp plan designation allows up to 11 units per acre. We're at the 3 units, which is at the very bottom of the scale that they say is recommended for this property. So, so wanted to make sure we noted that. We've had a lot of neighborhood participation in this project. We've reviewed all the letters that we've received. I've received several calls. I know Frank's talked to several of the neighbors. Brian, the builder's talked to several of the neighbors. We had a neighborhood meeting. We've met with the neighbors outside of after these meetings that we've had, and we've listened to what they've presented and told us, and we completely understand. It's difficult, when you work on these residential subdivisions. Man, nobody stands up and supports you. They really don't. Nobody shows up. It's only folks who've got who've got a problem with it, you know, it's something as we look as a community and we're going to build more houses, we have to figure out how that's going to occur, because, you know, there's nothing that brings people together like a subdivision project, and they're almost never in support of it. You know, you got me, the paid consultant, up here saying it's great, and we've got the developer or the landowner here today saying it's great, but it's a tough road to hoe, and it's not a position anybody wants to be in. You know, they don't want to develop a piece of property and be looked at as a bad guy. And you know, I think that's an unfortunate way of looking at these things. You know, once houses are in, they're very important to our community. And if people need houses, it's a fact. And when these houses are built, there'll be good neighbors that are moving in there. You know, and one of my coworkers used to say, hey, the people who are going to move in these houses, they're not here today to support it, but once they do, they're going to love this neighborhood. And it's, you know, we feel passionate about that. And so we think this is a really good project. It's in the Missoula urban area. It's in the metropolitan planning area. It's within the Missoula active transportation plan area. It's going to connect, and the folks who live here are going to be able to jump right on the Milwaukee Trail and commute right down to, you know, some great spots in Missoula. They get to bypass Reserve Street, which is a great amenity. You know, they're a couple hundred feet from one of Montana's busiest road corridors of Reserve Street. This is a good spot for houses. It's a flat site. We're keeping our houses away from the river. We've got no riparian or floodplain, or excuse me, no riparian or wetlands on the project. We are not in the floodplain, but we recognize that there's a levee keeping us out of there, and we've and as it works out, our site is above the base flood elevations where our houses are going to be. So we're very comfortable saying, hey, even though we're not in that floodplain, we're comfortable with making sure that we stay above 2 foot above the base flood elevation. Yeah, we feel great about it. It's a good site, and yeah, I'm here to answer any comments, or, you know, to hopefully keep the conversation going. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. And with that, I will open the public hearing. If anyone would care to comment on these items this evening, please step to the microphone. Let us know who you are for the record, please. And if you could keep your comments around 3 minutes, we'd be grateful.
Thank you.
Mr. Cohen.
I'm Frank Kolendich, and last time I was in front of you, I was a little under the weather, so I apologize for that. But last time I talked a little bit about the history of the property and how we'd owned it for about 100 years, and my grandparents. I'm going to kind of forego that tonight and keep it short. So what I would like to say is that about 15 years ago, 14, 15 years ago, I started getting mail from the trail people here in the city of Missoula. And we weren't really interested in developing the property or doing anything with it. We kind of had an emotional attachment to it. So, you know, 13 or 14 years later, that kind of wears off and people move out of town and so forth. So about 3.5 years ago or so, Elizabeth called, and she talked to us about maybe doing a trail through the property. And so my brother and I met with her. And that's kind of where it started. We went back and we met with the family. And the family said, maybe it's time. And it would be really nice to have a bike path because a lot of our family enjoys biking. And also we talked with Elizabeth and we talked about what property, we went through this with several meetings about what properties would be best for the city and Missoula. And honestly, our hearts are really in that. And we thought, you know, if the city of Missoula had the bridge and the bike path which connects everything, and also 300 or 400 feet of river frontage, it would be pretty nice. And it would be a good legacy for my grandparents who bought the property. It would be a good legacy for them. I know that there are neighbors that came forth, which kind of surprised us. We thought the project was a very good fit for the neighborhood. The neighborhood has always been a multi-use neighborhood. There's trailer courts, there's construction companies, there's rentals, there's everything in the neighborhood. You know, in all due respect to any neighbors who may not like this idea of what we're doing, when they put the 45-unit low-income housing across the street, there was a lot of protest, and it was directly across from us. But you know, in the long run, it was zero problem. So we have had no issues. And I think you will find, and I think they will find, that as this goes on, that's usually what happens. Things seem like they're going to be a lot worse than what they turn out. So with that, I would just like to say thank you for the opportunity, and we'll see where it goes.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else this evening? Yes, sir.
My name is Brian Mackey, and I live just south of this development. I have no problem. I live in a subdivision that was just recently built within the last, it's a little longer every year, 17 years ago. And I have no problem with the development. The one thing that really kind of baffles me is the 102 off-street parking spots. If you noticed, one of the slides had, it was a townhouse. It had 12 cars parked in the driveways, the two driveways. And then just 9 parking spots on the street. I have 2 teenage kids, and we have 4 cars in our household. And it just kind of baffles me how we're going to get, how 12 cars are going to park on the driveway and you're going to move people back and forth. It's, the exception of having the, denser housing, I just don't get the exception. Why not four houses per acre? And the other thing that kind of baffles me too is, they keep saying it's 3 houses per acre. That's true if you include the open space. As soon as you start, you take out the open space, that's no longer a building area, and it's now 31 houses in 4 acres, which is, what is it? Oh man, I had it before. 3.8. Yeah. Was it 3.8? Yeah, 7.38. I mean, a lot more. It is dense, and I mean, the houses are. I have no problem with it, with the 4 houses per acre, but trying to fit all those people, all the houses, all the cars on a street that really isn't designed for it is going to be a cluster. So that's all my thought.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else this evening? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Erin Doherty, and I've owned a house on Laurie Drive, which is just to the south of the Colin Ditch's place. I've been out there for 15 years, and my concerns are the access from Reserve. You cannot, if you're trying to get onto Reserve from River Street, you can't go north, and it's kind of hard to go south. And if you're driving south on Reserve Street, trying to turn onto River Road, you got to do it really quickly because you're going 45, and you got to watch the person behind you to make sure that they're noticing that you're turning, because there's nowhere to pull over and get out of their way. I think I heard someone say that 2 stories is normal in the neighborhood, and I would disagree with that. The only place that it's normal is on Hamilton Way and Roderick Way, and that's a newer neighborhood. And then the other thing is that there are not currently that many children living out there. There are a lot of people whose children have grown up and moved on, and so there are a lot of retired people. So that concerns me about the increase in traffic out there. We don't have sidewalks on Grove Street. It's narrow. Plowing works okay, but I'm concerned about kids getting off the bus, people coming to pick their kids up and walking back to our street, and that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Gordon. Anyone else this evening? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Kevin Wagner. I live at 2609 Laurie Drive. My wife and I have lived there for 27 years, almost 28. In that time, we've raised a family and seen our surroundings change from semi-rural and bucolic to developed, filled in, like most of Missoula. This we accept as a cost of living in a growing metropolitan city and community, but we've always taken solace in the fact that we were zoned RT10. And as you know, this code's a density of 4 to 5 dwellings per acre. We felt as the neighborhood filled in, our neighbors would have homes and yards built in compliance with the zoning that we have lived under for so long. Now, if you approve the resolution to annex the proposed Collin subdivision and rezone to RT 5.4 and approve a townhome exemption, it'll be clear that we were mistaken. If this is your vote tonight, then there should have been a disclaimer to begin with. And it would be something like this. Your zoning is subject to change in design and density due to a city council vote, date uncertain. Well, if that's what's to happen, I regret it. I appreciate the issues at hand, but it is it's a conundrum for those of us that live in the neighborhood, in the community. And I'd like to make a couple of other comments too. First, about safety. I was once nearly killed by an errant driver while my wife and I walked down the side of Grove Street. This driver drifted off the side of the pavement and nearly ran me over from behind because there was no curb to get her attention. Since there are very few sidewalks and no street lights on Grove, an additional 32 vehicles equates to more danger to pedestrians, especially the growing number of children waiting for a bus or just walking or playing along this ever more busy corridor. An elevation change at the crossing of the new Milwaukee Trail also obscures the vision of drivers. At the corner of Grove and 3rd, there's an increasing bottleneck that will only be exacerbated by doubling the residences and vehicles coming from the proposed subdivision. So I ask you, please, take another look, listen to our voices, and allow a subdivision that conforms to our current zoning standards and the aesthetics of Orchard Homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Anyone else this evening? Mr. Betty.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm Jim Betty, 2627 Roderick Way. I'm representing tonight 59 homeowners who've signed a petition protesting this proposal. And I'm going to be talking about what the petition actually is protesting regarding the Colin Ditch subdivision. According to section 20.85.0701, you, the city council, must determine whether specific review criteria are satisfied. That's been laid out for you again tonight. Under section C, buildings must be compatible with adjacent properties and uses in terms of physical design elements such as volume and mass management. Those are your words. Our protest petition states the proposed subdivision of 15 townhouses is not compatible with our adjacent neighborhood. So there are 59 homeowners who are protesting, and what I want to talk about, those are within about 3 blocks of the subdivision, proposed subdivision. 42 of these signatures, or 81%, are immediately adjacent to the subdivision. That's on Roderick, Hamilton Way, Quinn, and Everett. If you notice those streets, they're literally immediately adjacent. So 81% are protesting. 15% were not at home when we had these petitions signed. 1 favored the subdivision proposal. They liked the diversity of the trailers and the commercial and the duplexes. And 1 person, an employee of Territorial, abstained because of a conflict of interest. Just a few facts on the mass, volume, and density. So the adjacent homes to the subdivision, the 81%, will be who you're talking to when you vote. 52 single-family homes of about 2,000 square feet, these are averages, and 2-car garages, about 400 square feet, are on an average lot size of 6,000 square feet. The Colon Ditch proposal has 24 two-story townhouses of 2,000 square feet per dwelling unit, or 4,000 square feet per building. 6 are 1-story at 1,200 square feet times 2 would be 2,400 square feet, and each of those have 2-car garages at 400 square feet. The average lot size for the Colon Ditch subdivision is about 300 square feet. So the proposed zoning change from RT10 to RT54, although this is being massaged and proposed in a lot of spin, is going from 4 units to the acre to 8 units to the acre, plus the request for the townhouse exemption. Any way you cut it, you're doubling the mass, volume, and density. It is not compatible with adjacent homes. So 81% of us are protesting the zoning and townhouse exemptions. Just a quick insight into the duplex compatibility in this Grove Street area. There are about 20 duplexes in the area and or townhouses within a half mile. 17 of those are 1-story, about 900 square feet, large lots, and they're all rentals. 2 of them are 2-story, about 1,200 square feet, large lots, they're rentals. 1 townhouse built last year, 2-story, about the same size as the Colon Ditch proposal townhouses on 20,000 square foot lot. Totally different in terms of density. 10 of these duplexes are on Juneau Street, which is to the immediate west of this proposed subdivision. They're all duplexes and they all fit the RT10 criteria of 4 units to the acre.
We're pushing 5 minutes, Mr. Beck.
Okay. So, in conclusion, what we believe is the developer and the builder have options. We can still have the bike trail, we can still have open space. We can build 1-story townhouses on larger lots, or we could build single-family homes within the RT10 zoning that are just like our adjacent homes and fit into the neighborhood and still have the same volume of housing. So we would, as the one gentleman said, would really appreciate, as you're making the vote, are you going to fly in the face of the present occupants and homeowners at the request of a builder and a homeowner and a developer who want the density and are putting out for you the open space, that there's abundance of open space in that area on the other side of the river already. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Betty. Anyone else this evening?
Good evening. My name is Nia Myers. I'm a resident from Grove Street and a student from Hawthorne Elementary. I'm concerned about the new development because at my school there are too many students and not everyone has a proper classroom. Also, as a child, I would not like to not have a yard. Children need to play outside safely. It will sadden me that the park that they are donating will have absolutely no play structures. Also, I am also worried because when I walk to the bus stop, there is a ton of cars. I have to wait to cross the street. Most people don't stop for me. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Laura Myers, and I'm a resident off of Grove Street. I live off of Laurie Drive, and I'm with my neighbors in that, you know, we're not against development. We understand that it's inevitable. You cannot stop progress. But, you know, I think that we have to be smart. We have an opportunity as a community to look at how we're developing. And if this many people in this area are saying, hey, we need to do it differently, we appreciate that you guys would take the time to look at that. And yes, the open space is great, and I can understand why you guys would want that and why we would want to move forward with that. But, you know, I feel that there's a better way that we could do this development. And also Grove Street, just, I don't know if any of you guys live out there or have ever traveled out there during high traffic times, and it really is bad. And a mother of a child who has to walk to the bus and there's no signs that say bus stop, there's no crosswalk signs. It's a little nerve-wracking to think that there could be 60 plus new cars a day. And yes, the Milwaukee Trail is there, but realistically, how many of those people are going to commute? I live down there, I see how many people commute, and I guarantee that it's going to be a very small percentage of the people moving into that development that are actually going to utilize the Milwaukee Trail for commuter purposes. But I just hope that you guys really do listen and take into consideration everything that we've brought to you. And I had the opportunity to go door to door and help gather signatures for the petition for people that were, you know, not directly 150 feet, but it was the same response from everybody who signed the petition that yes, they did not want to see that much traffic on Grove Street. The increase in traffic is definitely a concern for all of us, and I think that, you know, that should be something that you guys take another look at and do another traffic study. Or maybe try to make some improvements to the street, maybe add some crosswalks or bus stop signs, but, you know, there's got to be something we can do. But hopefully you guys will listen and take all of our concerns into consideration tonight, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Sir.
Hi, my name is Morgan Hirschenberger. I'm hoping that I can get slide 23 back up on here? Is there any way? I've provided most of my comments in writing to the council, sent everybody my comments, and I've been at a lot of these meetings, if not most of them. I had just a couple of comments. I'm not going to restate everything that I've already said in writing. I got a couple of things that I noticed tonight that I think are worth pointing out. Number one, slide 8, excuse me, it was, that said that it's an explicit goal of the zoning to create connected sidewalks.
Excuse me, Morgan, 23.
23, yep, that's exactly what I'm looking for right there. Yeah, that's good. We're good right there. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you so much. And I'll keep it quick. Slide 8 specifically said that connected sidewalks was a goal of the city. One of the things that I've requested is that the sidewalk actually go the whole continuous area from the very first point of the development down here to the very end of the development over here. So that the sidewalk actually be continuous this whole way. That's part of the city's goal. One of the things that's being said is that this part is being subdivided separately from the rest of the development, and somehow that makes it exempt. My house that's right here was subdivided separately from the Roderick development, and it was subject to the sidewalk requirements there. So I fail to see how these two properties are so much different. That's one thing that I just wanted to point out. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that, one of the claims that was made to you was there was nowhere for them to connect down here, that there was nowhere to the south on Grove Street for them to connect the trail. That's just factually inaccurate. On Quinn Court, where it goes down here, there is full curb and gutter. They could connect to Quinn Court right here, and if they did that, they would have a full connection all the way from here on Roderick Way all the way down. Boom, right there. So I think that deserves consideration. The other thing on slide 23 that this shows pretty clearly is that a large part of the open space, maybe not the majority, but at least probably 40% of the open space here that you're looking at is all in a river, in a river tract, which explicitly, if you read the statute under the townhome development, that cannot be considered open space under the townhome development. I don't know, or at least that's how I read the statute. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. that, again, in the townhome exemption regulations, that things that are actually in a riverbed and otherwise unpassable there are not, they can't be considered as part of the open space. And that is, again, you can read it out of statute. I'll save you the time. The final thing that I just wanted to bring up, two more things. We talked about where the sidewalk can connect to the south. Consistent with two-story buildings, that theme keeps coming up. It is consistent with two-story buildings, consistent with the height. I don't think we're just talking about the height here. I think that we're talking about, again, volume and mass as defined by code. Volume and mass of these structures is at least double the structures that are adjacent to them. They're nowhere near the same size. If you want to say they're the same height, that would be substantially correct. If you're saying the same volume and mass, that would be incorrect by a factor of 2. So just for the record. And then 3 units an acre. If you tell me that there's 3 units an acre and we're going to use all of this land to calculate how much acreage there is, but we're only going to use this much land to put a sidewalk on, I think that there's some at least logical inaccuracies in that. So I hope you guys use logic as well as statute when you're making your decisions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else this evening? Yes, sir.
Good evening, folks. My name is Bob Harkin. I am just within the sphere of influence of this development. A couple of things is I note that the presentation has been significantly enhanced by city staff. Nice job. It looks great. A couple of issues I have are noted in that. If you will note where Hamilton comes down and joins where the development is proposed, right there at the line where it meets Roderick. Doesn't show it here very well, but it is 20 feet, 6.5 inches wide. I'm not sure, we're farther apart than that right now. And then it comes in. So we're saying that traffic coming on River Road and coming in on Hamilton is going to be going past, just barely make it. And the measurement of 20 feet, 6.5 inches is outside of curb to outside of curb. So you bring that in, tough for cars to pass. If somebody's parking there, it's not going to work. Another issue that I hear a lot about, and Morgan just mentioned this, is about the 10 acres. If you do the math, if you take 31 residences and put them into 10 acres, you get just slightly over 3 per acre. Well, over 6 acres are being sold. You can't have it both ways. Either you're going to sell it or you're going to keep it and keep the calculation, which means you don't need to have the zoning changed on it. So you can't sell 6+ acres for $320,000 and call that part of your land. Besides, that 10 acres is not developable feasibly. It's below the levee. So unless you're going to put in big sewage pumps and all kinds of infrastructure in there that makes it economically impossible or improbable to build, doesn't work. So you can't do that. It's pretty obvious that a large group of homeowners don't want to hear this. And by the way, those of folks that are here that are opposing this, could you stand for just a moment to get everybody get the council a look? Pretty big group. And that's just the guys that showed up tonight. But we like it here. The primary areas are in Orchard Homes, of course, but Streamside, Lewis and Clark, as well as our neighbors on Quinn Court, Everett Court, and Crystal Drive are vehemently opposed to this development. It can be done better. It seems the remaining issues are density, building mass, and safety. We've previously presented evidence that the building mass and density is terribly out of proportion with the neighborhood. This is required to be considered, but seems to have fallen by the wayside. The safety for neighborhood children, as Naya mentioned, I can't top her. I can't even get close to how she is. That's fallen on deaf ears. It concerns us gravely that the development is allowed to adversely and significantly affect our neighborhood, perhaps for the sake of a trail and some open space. We don't believe that the trail and open space, we do believe it can be done, but done right. I know it's important to have a trail. I'm right there. I'm all for it. It's good, but to do it this way is not good. When one of our representatives met with the developer, he tells us on one hand that he has too much money into the project to consider any revisions, and then says that the buildings as shown are not the final product. So we got to wonder, which is accurate? Maybe neither? Are we all being misled? I don't know, but I don't understand it. Does he think the city council is going to pass it on through? I'm not sure they will. I think you folks have heard enough of this tonight. Or is the project going to be even worse than we were anticipating? That's scary. If it's allowed to be pushed through when the day's over, there's going to be two parties involved. You guys and us. Developer's gone. He's down the road, and we're going to see his dust. And that's not this gentleman. That's the builder. We urge you to table the townhome exemption motion and get the project done right, and get it done right the first time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harkin. Anyone else this evening? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Allie McFarland. I live at the crossroads here of Hamilton and Roderick, right on the roundabout. I don't have anything new to say in terms of our concerns about the density of the townhome development and also the compatibility standards. I think when we talk about looking at long-term effects, though, we can't say that those are going to be zero. With the increase in traffic, I have 2 kids at home who I'm hoping are asleep by now, and 1 on the way. And so we're looking for, safety on our roads, just like many of our neighbors have already stated. I think also when we consider long-term effects, we have to think about the property values that have been established versus the property values coming in with our hypothetical new neighbors. And not to say that their rights trump ours, but that the investments that we've made in this unique neighborhood that have houses that are really compatible with each other, and then putting it right next door to a very large, massive structure that is so very different, I don't think we can look long-term and say, well, your investment is still as valuable as it was the day you built it. So those are my long-term effect concerns, and I appreciate my neighbors coming out and saying more eloquently than I could the issues with density and compatibility. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else this evening? All right, with that, I will close the public hearing. Are there questions from council members? Ms. West.
So I had a question for the developer. You'd mentioned that the building difference between a single story and a second double story was only 5 feet. And I guess that how is that possible? I guess.
Paul Forsting, Territorial Landworks. Well, I'm not the architect. Vince Gavin from Gavin Hanks is the architect, and he provided renderings, which I think what you get there is a taller, single, wider story, where you get a more compact 2-story. And the majority of when you have the 2 stories, most of the bedrooms are on the 2nd story, and so it gets pretty small. If you were to take the top story off the footprints of those 2 stories, you'd have like 900 square feet units or something like that. And so hopefully that answered it as best as I can. So, okay.
Further questions? Ms. Anderson?
You might not want to take a seat if you could come back. In your presentation earlier, you were referencing about the fact that if you were coming to us with this project in the current zoning of RT10, that you would actually be asking for more units than this RT 5.4 zone reference changes, correct?
No, my point there was that this project is permittable in the RT10 zoning.
Right.
The only change is that the park itself is an open space.
Okay.
So we could have an open space. We could have the park zoned RT10, but it's the city parks department's wishes, and it makes sense to have their park zoned with open space.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Yes, yeah.
Further questions? Ms. Missoula?
Paul, since you're there, one of the issues that was brought up was the location of the units and potentially swapping them from one side of the road to another in order to have the smaller footprint ones be adjacent to the property owners that are here present. Can you talk a little bit about why the design is what it is?
Yep, absolutely. Well, the footprint, the single ones, the single story buildings are wider. They're significantly wider. Those are the larger, wider lots, and so we're able to have a larger unit there, where there's the smaller, less wide lots have the 2 stories. And so if everything was wide, you could have more units there. We're up against a power line on one side, and we're 20 feet off of that, and then we have a road, and we're 20 feet off of that. And so we're, the prism for moving lots around, and I think it would be our preference to have things wider. I mean, these are going to be $300,000 units, and that's a lot of money for a townhouse unit. There's a townhouse unit up the road I think they're asking $309 now for it. So you want to make them attractive. For 900 square feet, you're getting pretty small and pretty aggressive there. The goal is to have them really kind of, it would be our preference to have them larger, wider, more spread out. I mean, the most valuable lots will be along the levee, where if you look, there's a $600,000 house on Roderick Way on the levee there. Our houses won't be on the levee. We had to make them compact, but that's at the cost, I guess, of there being open space, of folks in the community being able to ride their bike and go fishing down there, where instead of one person for the house could do that, a different layout. And so I hope I answered it. It's really a matter of spacing. We had to fit everything in there.
Ms. Hart?
Paul, just make sure I heard that correctly, because sometimes my hearing can be a little creative.
Right.
So you say it was roughly 900 square feet per?
For the bottom floor.
For the bottom floor. So you're looking at 1,800 square feet on both sides, correct?
Yes, if you were to take the top floor off of if you look at those units where, our tallest units are in the smallest lots, and they're 25 feet. They're 5 feet below the zoning requirements, and that's, but if you took the top off of those, you would have about 900 square foot units.
Okay. And those were at 300,000 or give or take?
They'll be, so to be clear, we're talking a $300,000 unit has got 4 bedrooms, 2 stories, 25 feet.
Okay.
About 1,600, 1,700 square feet.
Okay. So I would imagine that you toyed around with the idea of doing single family so that it would meet the character of the neighborhood. How many single family houses would you be able to put into this area, and for what price tag?
Single families, well, on single families, we would look at developing the whole site, with the most valuable being along the river. That's, there's a house listed for Ron Roderick that I just mentioned for $600,000. If these were all single families, 300,000, 350,000, 375,000. How many could we fit? Well, I mean, right now you could say maybe we could fit on this exact site. I mean, you would want to develop the whole site. I think if you were going to do single families, the logical use of land here would be to have the trail maybe in a narrow corridor going through the middle, and try to fit as many houses as you can on there. Yeah,
would you have more single family or less single family houses?
It would probably you would develop the whole site and probably about the same, around the same. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
For the record, this is single family attached, correct?
Correct, yes, and that's a good point, Mayor. They're going to be individually owned. These aren't duplexes where one person will buy and rent out the other unit or rent both. These will be units that will all be individually sold.
Okay. Further questions? Ms. Karras?
Mary, can you come up? Ms. McCray, I know I've read the memo and the materials, but what I'm hearing from the folks in the audience and what I'm hearing from the developer are just so far away from each other that I would appreciate another go at the explanation for whether or not the developer can count the open space land towards their total units per acreage, and why.
Sure, Mary McCray with Development Services. So there's 2 actions that you're taking, and when we look at the annexation and zoning, we're looking at the whole 10.63 acres. Like Paul had said, they could stretch and spread those units across the whole property. So this won't be a subdivision, this is a townhome exemption, which is an exemption from subdivision review, so I wanted to clear that up. But in the annexation and zoning, you look at, you take the 10.63 acres and you divide it by the number of units. It includes the existing house on Grove Street, and you come up with just around 3 dwelling units per acre. So that's for the annexation and zoning. If you approve the RT 5.4, that has a maximum density of 8 dwelling units per acre, and it only applies in this area here. So we're only looking at this area here, and then you calculate the density of this area, how many units can you get on it, and you could get 33 dwelling units on the 4.2 acres for the townhome development, and they're proposing 31. That's what they could fit based on the, the tapering of the site, having the Milwaukee Trail, cut diagonally through the middle of it. And that's how density is calculated, but they're two different things. Once it's zoned RT 5.4, you're looking at the portion that's zoned RT 5.4 for that density for the townhome.
And so that's the 7.
Correct.
Thank you.
Further questions? Mr. Hess?
Thanks. Ms. McCray, I have another question for you. I know you touched on this, but we had the note from Mr. Hirschenberger that talked about building sidewalk on Grove Street, and I know there's some complexities as to what triggers sidewalks. Can you go over that one more time, just
Sure.
to make sure it's clear for me?
So as projects are developed with development, that's when we get our sidewalks. So this development will have a sidewalk on the south side of Coley Lane, sidewalks on both sides of Hamilton Way, and a curbside sidewalk adjacent. And this happens with all sorts of projects when we have boundary line relocations and they're rearranging boundaries and a vacant lot is created. With the existing house, if they're not changing anything about it, there's no requirement to install a sidewalk with that. It's the same with this. So on the 311 Grove Street, typically the sidewalks come with development. We will, if they were to add a large enough addition that would increase their parking requirement, change how they access their parking, or tore it down and built a new house, they'd be required to have sidewalk. The property to the south is in the county, and typically we do not order in sidewalk when the property adjacent is in county land. And so, all across the city we have, as projects are developed in areas that don't have sidewalks, we'll get pieces of sidewalk built with the development, and then at a point when we have enough of those and they move up the priority list of the installation for sidewalks with the Public Works Department, sidewalks are ordered in. And that's just how sidewalks are built.
So to be clear, the Grove Street property, the blue outlined one, is outside of the conditional use, therefore sidewalks cannot be conditioned on that.
Terrific.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
that's
you.
exactly it. And then there will be sidewalks, though, on the open space portion. When the trail gets developed, they'll look at the whole crossing and they'll put sidewalks in adjacent.
Thanks.
Ms. Harp, are you on my list?
Elizabeth? So if we were to have only single-family homes in this development only, what would be the ramifications from an open space acquisition point of view?
Well, I think without seeing a site plan for what that would look like, it's hard to know specifically, but a couple ideas is if the entire site were developed with houses on what I've been calling the flag portion of the property, there would clearly be a crossing that would have to cross the trail there, a vehicular crossing. And chances are the access road to those houses would probably come from Grove Street. There would probably need to be some sort of an access here, or there would need to be a crossing here. It's just that vehicular access that would impact the trail quite a bit. And it would affect where you could site the trail on this land. And depending on what their calculations were for setbacks and everything, it would potentially impact, it would just impact the acreage available for open space. And
okay.
So those are the things I can think of off the top of my head without seeing any specific site plan.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. West?
So this question might be for Mary. So I have a question about the lot lines that are represented on the map, and I guess lots make me think of subdivisions, which it's not a subdivision. So I was wondering, when a side of one of these townhouses sells, are they, in theory, buying half of the pictured lot?
It's not a lot. It's a unit ownership parcel. And I know often folks call them lots, but in our planning office, we really distinguish between a subdivision lot and a townhome exemption lot. So yes, down the middle of each one of these units is a unit ownership line. And so this unit would own from the center down the middle to this line over here.
Further questions? Seeing none, Ms. Becerra?
Yes, I would like to make the motion that we adopt a resolution to annex and incorporate within the boundaries of the city of Missoula a 10.63 acre parcel located west of Grove Street and south of the Clark Fork River, further described with the meets and bounds in petition number 9862, and zone annexation exhibit 8 parcel RT 5.4 residential, and annexation exhibit B parcel OP1 open space in the city, subject to 2 conditions of approval included in the staff report.
Thank you, Ms. Becerra. That motion is in order. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. Ramos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I first got elected to the City Council, I was treated to a very riveting presentation by the Honorable Jim Nugent about how we're supposed to handle land use decisions. And we're supposed to wear 2 hats, more or less, for those in the audience. We're supposed to have our personal opinions, and then we're supposed to have our judge hats on. So we're supposed to more or less just look at something based on the issues and the laws. And for that reason, it puts me in a very hard situation, because personally, I support everything about this subdivision. I mean, I support personal property rights, your right to develop it. I really like your vision, Mr. Kolendich. But on the other hand, I put on my judge hat, if you will, and it's very, very difficult for me to vote yes on this, because in committee meetings last Wednesday, I brought up the 1974 landmark Supreme Court decision by the state of Montana about Lowe versus the city of Missoula. And it looks like that decision has been referenced several times during this presentation and different pitfalls of it. And I was just surprised it seemed like nobody else on the council had been briefed on this yet. And then the Honorable Mr. Nugent sent us his legal opinion on it later that day. And I really think that we're opening the city up and the taxpayers up to a lawsuit at this point, because there's several different areas in here that I think could be argued very easily that we are in violation of this decision. And I know there's a lot of folks that are unhappy with this, and it would just be incredibly irresponsible of me to vote yes on this and expose the city to a lawsuit. And I think it's also important to mention that this I guess this open space is also, it seems to be the cause of some of these problems here. And again, I mean, I think it's going to be a great asset to those folks that can afford this subdivision. It's $300,000. So the rich people in the city are going to be happy. But we've just sat through a presentation. We've all swore that we're going to try and make housing more affordable in Missoula, and we're requiring this open space. And I mean, I understand that, and it's going to be great for the people that can afford it. But for all these reasons above, I'm going to suggest that we send this back to committee for further discussion, so that we can discuss Mr. Nugent's legal opinion and ask questions on that, because again, I do not want to open us up to a lawsuit.
Mr. Ramos has asked that this item be returned to committee. That's his prerogative, unless another council member elects to make a motion to suspend our rules and hold this on the floor. Mr. Von Lossberg?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and keep this on the floor. We've had this in committee multiple times, plenty of time to vet this, so I'll make that motion.
Okay. Mr. Von Lossberg's motion is in order to keep this item on the floor. Is there discussion on that motion? Seeing none, anyone in the audience care to comment on the motion to keep this item before the body this evening? Seeing none, we'll have a voice vote. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? And the item remains before the body. Further discussion on the motion. Ms. Jones.
I have quite a few comments, and I've sat through all of the presentations and public comment on this and have listened to everyone, and I appreciate everyone's time that has been spent on this. And I really appreciate that you're not going to put storage units in, so that's great. Good baseline there that we're going from. I heard tonight the amount of people who have signed the petitions, and it's very impressive. It's a high number. But what I come back to is we do have a legal framework that we have to analyze these decisions with, and it's not just a number vote. So although there's some strong opinions and many people have galvanized on this issue, I come back to, again, we do have a legal framework. And actually, I was really glad that Councilman Ramos brought up the Lowe decision, Lowe versus City of Missoula, last week, and appreciated Jim Nugent's legal opinion that was sent out on that. And I thought it was actually exceptionally clear. It does apply to this case. This case does apply to what we're having in front of us. And it was good to go back and read that opinion again. And I have to say, the attorney that appealed it to the Supreme Court did an incredible job. But what I come away with is Lowe talks about the fact that we have to use legal framework. We cannot focus on whether or not change is a good or bad thing and the emotional impact from that. We have to focus on the legal framework. And Lowe goes through 12 different tests, which that's why we have such a methodical presentation by Mary McRae, because she's going through all of those elements. Whether there's a different slant on some of those, you know, people can always make arguments back and forth, but when you look at it holistically, I think these 12 elements, for the most part, this is a good project. This should go through. And I wanted to especially highlight test 12 from Lowe, which says, well, the new zoning, and I have to preface, Lowe was a down zoning, so they were, it's a complicated fact situation, but the bottom line was the property owners wanted to put in something dense, and it was instead downzoned, so they could not put in something as dense. So test 12 is, will the new zoning encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout such municipality? This raises a policy question of whether the community needs an apartment complex at this particular site. If there is a need, then error was made to rezone it into single residential homes. Evidence was introduced in the form of the Mayor's Advisory Council on Housing report, which indicated a continual growth in Missoula and a need to replace substandard units. This is back in 1974. Now we're in 2018. We have a Missoula growth policy that we passed in 2015, which said we need to focus inward, we need to build more densely because we are continuing to grow, and if we don't do that, we're going to sprawl. And there was a policy decision made by the community in which a huge amount of community input was made that we need to focus inward and build more densely. And I think it was actually had a huge amount of foresight, because now in 2018, we really need to pay attention to this, because we not only have an affordable housing crisis, we have an inventory crisis in Missoula. We have a lack of inventory across many spectrums of how affordable, in other words, on all levels, we have an inventory crisis. So we need more units if we're going to retain the Missoula that we want to see in the future. So that is, to me, the highest value in terms of how we are analyzing this. And I appreciate the parking, the traffic, the fire, all of these, the street usage. We go through all of these, and we'd love to have a perfect world where there's perfect parking and perfect streets, but I think our city staff has addressed that, and our values and our policies are saying that we need to build a little bit more densely. And to me, going from single family dwellings in an adjacent neighborhood to townhomes next to it may be more dense, but it is a completely reasonable step up in density, setting aside any of the open space. I think this is a very reasonable reasonable project. So I'm going to leave it at that, but I find low to apply and actually give us even more guidance, and thank you, Mr. Nugent, for spelling this out. So I am in favor of this.
Mr. Von Lossberg?
Thanks. Since the current motion is just the annexation and zoning, I'll limit to that for the time being. I wanted to thank Mary for laying out, I think, very clearly the rationale and the legal framework, specifically the citation to the growth policy, which is our most recent planning document that governs here, in addition to the citations to the 1995 Reserve Street Area Plan. I think the presentation lays out very clearly why this is a reasonable action to take. It's consistent with law. It's consistent with our plan documents. Appreciated the highlighting of some of the similarities between the RT10 and RT 5.4 zoning, and I wanted to briefly mention this is not a vote just of this council on this particular matter that changes sort of zoning plans. This is a citation. This is a reference back to the growth policy, which was a long, I think in excess of a year, public process with all kinds of input around, and any action we take tonight is a reference to that process for the foundation that undergirds it. So I'm in support of the motion on the floor.
Further discussion? Ms. Karras?
Essentially, I don't disagree with the citizen complaints that we've heard, but unfortunately, none of them rise to a level that I think there's a clear place for denial. I wish there were sidewalks across the site, but unfortunately, it's outside of the area we can condition. I wish the developer had agreed to switch the fewer, wider lots to the north and the more numerous, smaller lots to the south, but there's nothing I can legislatively condition to make that so. I don't think there's enough parking because people will fill up their garages with stuff and their driveways with boats or snowmobiles or the like, and there are only 9 off-street parking spots, but Development Services has approved the parking plan. Lastly, on traffic, Development Services tells us that the most recent traffic counts for Grove Street near the intersection with South 3rd Street West were in 2016 almost 1,600, and that was similar to the 2015 count of 1,550. And up from the previous 3 years, which was around 1,100. They say that with the added volume projected to come from the Grove Street townhome development, the anticipated traffic count will be around 1,890 vehicles. Accordingly, they say this is well within the traffic volume of up to 2,500 being designed for with the new improvement to Grove Street. So I think these complaints around number of units per acre, traffic, parking, and size of units is the cry of Ward 6, the ward that's recommended to be the most densely zoned as per the growth policy. And I've heard that with things that are even approved by right and don't ever come before city council, but you know, there have been so many lots that have been developed within Ward 6 in the past, my tenure, and we just see this continuing. I don't have a way to address it, and I'm not sure what we'll do for the ward, but I do want to apologize to the neighbors for not standing with them in my vote.
Further discussion? Mr. Ramos?
I just wanted to thank Mr. Nugent and Ms. Jones. You're both attorneys, and I appreciate your guys' insight. But again, I'm just very nervous about this. I just got on council a few weeks ago, and I'm just not comfortable enough with the legal wording to vote for this. And I hope you guys are both right, and that we're not opening ourselves up to a big lawsuit. So thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we've had a public hearing. We'll have a roll call vote.
Okay, on the motion to annex and zone the property, Cares. Yes. Cares votes yes. Harp.
Yes.
Harp votes yes. Hess. Yes. Hess votes yes. Jones. Yes. Jones votes yes. Merritt. Yes. Merritt votes yes. Ramos.
No.
Ramos votes no. Von Lossberg. Yes. Von Lossberg votes yes. West. Yes. West votes yes. Anderson.
Yes.
Anderson votes yes. Becerra. Becerra votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 9 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 absent.
And the annexation and zoning is approved. Ms. Becerra.
I would like to make a motion to approve a conditional use request for a townhome exemption development of more than 10 units at Colanditch Grove Street Townhomes in accordance with the city zoning ordinance, Title 20, Sections 20.05.040D, 20.05.050, 20.40.180, and 20.85.070, based on the findings of fact in the staff report and subject to the conditions of approval.
That motion is in order. Discussion on the motion. Ms. Jones.
I just want to take all of my prior comments and apply them to this motion now.
I'm sorry.
This is the second time I've done this on Colanditch, but anyway, what I said before applies to this motion.
Ms. Anderson?
I have a question. Oh, wait, this is comments, but in reference to the amendment to 13, does that motion include in that, or is that a separate undertaking?
Ms. Becerra?
Yes, it would include amending condition of approval number 13.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Karras?
I just would like to ditto Ms. Jones. Should have said my comments here. Apologies.
Further discussion? Mr. Hess?
I'll say my comments here. This is, excuse me. I'm going to support the motion, and it's not without extreme respect for the points the neighborhood brings forward. This has been a difficult issue to consider, and I don't have the legal mind that Ms. Jones has, but I appreciate your comments and the way that you convey the legal framework within we must work. I do know that this is in line with our growth policy, and as mentioned, that the RT 5.4 has very similar requirements in terms of setbacks and building heights as the other district. The issues of safety and connectivity and sidewalks and roadway improvements are not falling on deaf ears. There's a tremendous infrastructure deficit out here, and we need to work to improve that outside of this project, to improve Grove Street and other areas, and you have my full support on that when the time comes. I'm excited about the open space project. I do believe when the dust settles, this will be a nice development that will fit in well, and I will support the motion.
Ms. West?
So I'll start out by saying I'll also support this motion, but I do think that these are not issues that are unique to this part of town, that we're feeling these effects of new development all around us, and we're all struggling with these ideas of neighborhood character and whether or not things fit in. For example, there have been many small-scale townhouse developments on the north side that I would argue maybe don't quite fit in, but they're perfectly permitted by zoning and look nothing like the 1900 and 1920s houses that surround them. But at the same time, you know, things change. And I did want to briefly speak to this townhome exemption process that we're going through right now. So at the end of my street, there was a Scott Street subdivision, Scott Street Village that went in, which is going to be about 103 new housing units when it's fully built out, which consists of 24 single-family homes. I have to do math here. 29 townhomes and 50-unit multi-family structure when it's all said and done. And David, Joel, and Colin Bangs, who are the developers of this project, did a really fabulous job at reaching out to the neighborhood prior to the process that we're going through now. These huge developments could go in before this exemption or this conditional use process without anybody knowing that they were happening. And I think that there is some benefit to the neighborhood and the process and the final outcome of projects to going through what we're doing right now. And I do appreciate that this is available to us. But I am going to support it because I think that we need housing. And that there is a great benefit to the community as a whole from what we're gaining. And I know that the price point isn't, maybe as low as I would like to see it, but hopefully in the future we can figure out some ways to get some increased affordability into developments like these. So thank you.
Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. A lot of my comments have been made, so just a smattering of some other thoughts. First off, I really appreciate Ms. West bringing up the townhome exemption conditional use review. We wouldn't have been having any of these conversations had we not made the changes to that back, I think it was maybe a year and a half ago, and that's part of what Heidi is getting to, is that this would have likely just happened. And I think part of the reason that's important is that, as Jordan, as Mr. Hess mentioned, a lot of the comments are on point about, I'm the father of a almost 6-year-old little girl, and I take to heart the concerns about safety and school kids getting to school. And as Mr. Hess referenced, we have to tackle it bit by bit. We get a portion of improvements along with the development. I can see another portion coming when we do work associated with that open space, and it might be that there's some economies of scale where we can get some additional areas when that open space, connecting those two. We have to look at the whole process for how we order in these infrastructure improvements, but the reality is we tackle it bit by bit. And coming from a neighborhood that is severely deficient in some of this infrastructure, it's a painfully slow sort of process. I had a couple other thoughts I'm trying to think of. I appreciate, in particular, the developer talking through, how this might have looked under RT10 zoning and stretched across, and I think that what this represents is a development that is much better for the community, both the immediate community and the community as a whole, than something spread across there with a corridor for the open space splitting it. So I think we're getting a better development in that sense. And I guess lastly, part of what we also have to do with this is to provide predictability for folks who have property and property rights for development. And I look to and rely on, as we all do, under the code framework that we have relative to things like setbacks and height restrictions and such, that when we follow those, and if the developer stays within those, that we're providing that predictability for development as well as suitable protections for the folks nearby. And again, I think Mary has done a very solid, comprehensive job of laying out how the development meets those criteria, and we do have work to do on the surrounding infrastructure, and we'll have to tackle that over time. So we'll support the motion.
Ms. Hart?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Your concerns are not unfounded, and in fact, I hear them every day from constituents in my ward, but they're a little bit different. It usually revolves around an ADU or a multifamily dwelling unit going in, which is a little bit different than what you're going to be facing. And the fact of the matter is that we have a growing Missoula, and many people want to live here. And we have to find ways that we can all accommodate each other in a meaningful and neighborly way. The last 2 weeks, council has been invited to a number of different presentations revolving around affordable housing. And last week we had a presentation that stated that we have 6,000 ready-to-go buyers in Missoula. 6,000. I don't know where they go, but I tell you, all neighborhoods are going to have to find ways to accept one another and live nearby and get along. And so I know in my own ward, we have work to do, and I know in your neighborhood you have to welcome our fellow Missoulians. And I know the uncertainty is what breeds a lot of fear, and what we find is that once time goes by, we forget about what those fears are. So what I encourage all of us to do across the city is to rise up and accept one another. Thank you.
Mr. Ramos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming down and voicing your opinions and getting involved with your city government, and also making sure that your individual property rights were heard. And I truly think that they were. I can see the mayor's computer from here, and he's only supposed to allow you guys 3 minutes, and oftentimes he went to 5 minutes and even 6 minutes. So he didn't have to do that, but he really did want to hear your guys' comments. And I encourage you, it unfortunately looks like it's not going to go your way tonight, but I encourage you to keep coming down and keep engaging in your city government. And I think down the road here quickly there's going to be an attempt maybe to deregulate, as they would call it, the right to a public hearing as far as ADUs, and I think that it's really important that you guys speak up and encourage the city to keep that in there. And anyways, just thanks for coming down, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Becerra.
I would like to echo what has been said. I too will support this development. I think Missoula is a very diverse community, and the type of housing that we now develop needs to demonstrate that, needs to match that. I would like to thank staff for the very thorough job, for bringing to us a proposal that meets our regulations, and city parks staff for seeking the opportunity to acquire this piece of land that I think will be of tremendous benefit to the community. And also to all the neighbors that came here, thank you, because I think you all brought excellent points, and you made me at least look at this twice, if not 3 times, to make sure that what was before us was something supported by our regulations. I would encourage the developer to work with the neighbors in the future to perhaps mitigate any potential negative outcome. I think you've heard some really good information from all of them, and please use it. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we've had a public hearing. We'll have a roll call vote.
Okay, on the motion to approve the conditional use, I think we're at Harp to start the roll.
Yes.
Harp votes yes. Hess. Hess votes yes. Jones. Jones votes yes. Merritt. Merritt votes yes. Ramos.
No.
Ramos votes no. Von Lossberg. Von Lossberg votes yes. West. West votes yes. Anderson.
Yes.
Anderson votes yes. Becerra. Becerra votes yes. And Cares. Cares votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 9 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 absent.
And the conditional use is approved. We have no more public hearings this evening. I will pass on communications from the mayor. We'll begin general comments from council members with Mr. Von Lossberg. Ms. West, Mr. Hess, Ms. Becerra, Ms. Jones, Ms. Hart.
Nope.
I'm sorry, Ms. Jones.
I'm moving as fast as I can here.
So, folks, I'll ask that you take your conversations outside. We're still in order. Thank you. Ms. Jones?
I just wanted to quickly congratulate Loyola Sacred Heart High School for their 35th year in a row state championship for their speech and debate team. It's one of the longest records held in the United States, is my understanding. Matt Sturgis is the coach, along with several other people, and Loyola Sacred Heart continues to bring home the gold in the state beat competition every year, and 35 years in a row is a huge accomplishment. So congratulations.
Ms. Hart.
I wanted to just mention that I went on a ride along with the fire department with Councilwoman Cares this weekend, and I think the fire department would love all of us to come along because we only had one excursion that forced us out of the building, and the rest of the time we actually spent talking with the firefighters and really kind of dissecting some of the things that, how they perceive land use planning, for example, that we should take into consideration. And it was a blast.
I have a bunch of cracks about the number of calls, but I'm letting that all go. Mr. Ramos. Ms. Anderson.
Yes, so I'm going to keep my comments brief because we've been here for quite some time. But as most of you know, February is Heart Disease Awareness Month, and it is the #1 killer of women. It causes 1 in 3 deaths of women a year, which is approximately 1 woman every minute. And I'm wearing today, red today, in honor of my grandmother, Carol, who I lost to heart disease, and my best friend, Nicole, who struggles every day with heart disease. And so I wanted to bring that awareness to council.
Ms. Merritt. Ms. Cares.
As Ms. Harp mentioned, 1/6 of council was at Fire Station 1 this Saturday evening, and it was wonderful, and I really appreciate the time from the battalion chief that was there and the rest of the members of the fire department. It's not often that we have the fire chief in the building at 9:20 p.m., so I was thinking about writing you a thank you note, and I'm just going to cross that off my list. Thanks a lot for letting us come down because it really was super beneficial for both of us. Thank you.
One call and the fire chief was there at 9:25. Okay. Noted for the record. Thank you all. We'll move on to committee reports. Items listed under committee reports were not approved unanimously in council committees. Chairperson of that committee will make a motion based on the committee's action, and we'll invite comment on each of these items before we vote. We only have one this evening, and that happens in the Administration and Finance Committee. Ms. Hart?
This is where I just read the motion, right? Okay. Let me make sure I got that. Recommended motion is to set a public hearing on February 26, 2018 on a resolution amending the annual appropriations for the City of Missoula, Montana, as set forth in the fiscal year 2018 budget and capital improvement program that increases the total city budgeted expenditures by $794,165 and appropriate the general fund and capital project fund expenditures in the amount of $794,165 in order to recognize expenditures related to increased wildfire overtime, cemetery operating supplies related to new services, and expenditures related to the approved community development blocks grant sidewalk project grant.
The motion to set public hearing is in order. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. Ramos.
I will be very quick on this because we've been here very late. So I just want to make it clear that I did not vote no on this item to deny the firefighters the funds that they deserve. They worked tirelessly all summer and risked their lives to protect us and keep us safe, and I very much support that. I just vehemently opposed the city cemetery stealing work from local businesses during the campaign, and I still oppose that. And this also gave an additional several $1,000s to the city cemetery for those additional services that are going to cost the taxpayers some more money.
So, Mr. Ramos, you're getting a little far afield here. This is a motion to set a public hearing on those questions,
okay, yeah.
not a debate on the merits.
I appreciate that. And that's ultimately why I voted no on it, because I wanted to separate those two items out, because I did not want to take away from the brave firefighters by, as you just pointed out, a fairly passionate discussion that's unfortunately going to take place when the public hearing occurs. So that's it.
Further discussion on the motion to set a public hearing? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience care to comment? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote.
On the motion to set a public hearing, Hess. Yes. Hess votes yes. Jones. Jones votes yes. Merritt. Yes. Merritt votes yes. Ramos.
No.
Ramos votes no. Von Lossberg. Von Lossberg votes yes. West. West votes yes. Anderson. Yes. Anderson votes yes. Becerra. Yes. Becerra votes yes. Cares. Yes. Cares votes yes. And Hart.
Yes.
Hart votes yes. Would any of you like to change your vote? That's 9 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 absent.
And the motion is approved. We don't have any additional committee reports this evening, nor any items of new business. Are there any additional items to be referred? Seeing none of those, any miscellaneous communications, reports, petitions, or announcements? Ms. Becerra.
As you all probably know, I will be absent for a couple of weeks. I need to travel to South America, so I will have a glass of wine or something in your honor.
Fair enough. Seeing no additional announcements, ladies and gentlemen, as always, I thank you for your service. We will be adjourned.